reduced almost by 19 seconds from 169 to 150 seconds. One of the other projects that we identified that came out of a planning session almost 16, 18 months ago was branch workforce management. Due to e-technologies and increasing usage of online banking and integrated voice response systems, the branch volume had either kind of leveled out, or in some cases in different branches and areas was actually declining. Even though the transaction complexity had increased at the branches, the staffing at the branches at the time had been basically relatively flat from year to year. We will continue to open new branches that required additional resources and training, but we wanted to identify the opportunities that would enable us to either simplify the processes and best allocate our resources and also match the right employee or staffing model to the appropriate transaction volume. Now, with that being said, a branch is not necessarily a branch. Every one of our branches, the different geographic areas that they serve, have slightly different transaction volumes or different transaction types. For example, at one branch we might see 60% of their transaction volume come through the drive-through, whereas at another branch it may be 60 to 70% of that actually comes into the lobby. So with that being said, we embarked off on this project, which was more than a one-week event. It was actually a project that lasted about 6 months from beginning to end, from the data collection standpoint and the identification of each of the transaction volumes. We needed to identify opportunities not only to simplify processes, but also best allocate our resources. One of the core objectives out of this project was to match basically the right employee to the right transaction. As I mentioned, different branches had different modeling needs, so as a result, this project took a little longer, and as a result, about 6 months worth of data collection was required in total. At that particular time, we had less than 30 branches, and from that, we actually, with some assistance from Guidon, constructed a resource planning model. Now, one of the direct results, besides this resource planning tool, was to better align resources with those transaction volumes. But again, it was critical that we did that without affecting our current member service levels and or goals. Now, we have implemented this in a pilot phase at the beginning of this year, and we have continued to roll that out to additional branches in different regions over the last couple of months, and projected, based on some of the results that we have seen and or forecast, to be about $1.5 to almost $2 million over the next couple of years. The way that was accomplished, and I mentioned in one of the very first slides, is that we now have a flexible employee profile that didn't exist before, that came directly out of this process review and branch workforce management tool, where we now have employees that we can better slot in based on need at different branches at different times of the day. And that is something that was worked closely with human resources, operations, member services, and it's something that's taken us about 6 to 8 months to actually get into place. We actually expect to have this fully implemented by year's end. In addressing the branch workforce management project, our approach was to assess the current branch processes, their overall performance, then identify opportunities. We launched a Lean Sigma workforce project team and identified folks from different branches in different regions, and then constructed different models and tools to assist in the allocation of those resources. As I mentioned before, different regions, different branches had different transaction volumes. Sometimes they varied in length, but also in type, based on the ratios of, example, teller walk-up traffic versus ATM and or drive-through traffic. The results was to simplify the current scheduling process, and at that particular time, each one of the almost 30 branches did their own individual schedules, and each one of them did them a little differently. Once we put the program in place and piloted it for 3 months with 4 branches, each one in a different region, the tool revealed a potential savings of anywhere between 10 and 20% of our staffing and resource costs. Each one of the managers can now actually use this tool to match the appropriate capacity to volume. And once the pilot program has been completely tested, we plan to roll this model out across the remaining 27 branches. I know I've only touched on several of the events or process reviews we've done here at Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union, but I hope it gives you at least a general idea of what Lean Sigma and or Kaizen events are about. When I said we embarked on this journey several years ago, we were really focusing on the business side of the house, the business processes, back office functions, those areas where there were high transactional volumes identified. Obviously, because we thought at the time that if we can save a second here and we do it 8 million times a year, well, the savings can add up. But we began to realize that there were a lot of processes and or projects that were very lengthy in time and were extremely costly, but there were things that we may only have done, once or twice a year. And they primarily focused on IT. In this particular context and challenge, as everybody is witnessing and or addressing today, IT budgets are becoming a lot tighter, and our resources that we have at hand are becoming fewer. That and the business's demands on IT have changed also, in that they expect us to be able to address any change that they see as quickly as possible. That coupled with the regulatory requirements and changes that we are currently facing, it's becoming increasingly more important that IT be aligned and is able to address those business needs as quickly as possible. One of the other issues I'm sure most organizations out there have witnessed is that there's always a project contention and a competition for resources based on different business units and different business needs. And then the ability to actually deliver, in a timely fashion, which is kind of key, both internal and to our external members, is critical. So why look for a better way? As I've mentioned before, these projects, although there were not many or are not many, they can be quite lengthy and involve a lot of resources, not only from an IT perspective, but also from a business perspective. I won't go over all the details here in this slide, but using a traditional project management methodology, bottom line is that 60% of all projects will fail in some way. And the ability to be able to turn these projects around in a timely fashion was becoming increasingly more difficult. Some of the problems associated with the traditional approach were that as the project was so lengthy, specifically as it pertained to gathering the requirements, creating a project plans, actually even before the development phase began, what was happening was the business needs were obviously changing before the development life cycle was complete. This made things very ineffectual, very slow, and projects, traditionally were managed and evaluated based on the plan versus the actual value that was delivered. The cost associated with this is phenomenal, and one of the main reasons is as I mentioned before, in errors and rework, anytime there's a mistake or something changes and you have to go back and actually make that change from the beginning or again, there is a significant cost associated with it. So with those escalating costs, using Lean Sigma as part of the software development cycle can have some significant improvements. And one of the things is it eliminates waste. The idea is rather than take a lengthy period of time to define requirements and to produce something, you're actually identifying the needs and the requirements in a much, much shorter time frame. And as a result, you're actually able to create or deliver a product faster to the customer. I can use a recent project as an example. Internally, we developed an iPhone application. Basing this on our traditional, waterfall methodology, that project would have probably taken anywhere from, say, 8 to 14 months. Using a Lean Sigma software development lifecycle or approach, we're actually to roll it out from its inception to a full production environment in probably less than 4 months. And again, that was actually pretty significant. As a result, we eliminated a lot of waste. We built the quality in because it was done in a much faster time frame. And also the quality of the product was extremely high, which minimized the errors and or the rework that would normally be associated in a traditional environment. Okay, so I know I've covered a lot over the last 30 minutes, but one of the questions I normally get is how do we get started? What should we be doing to implement a process improvement initiative in our environment.